The sound of his body hitting the hospital floor was louder than the punch. People would later talk about the moment as if it were violence, but the nurse remembered it as panic, fear, burning panic that left no room for permission or fear. Her fist moved before her mind caught up, striking the Navy Admiral square in the chest, just below the collarbone, hard enough to knock the air out of him and drop him to his knees. "Are you insane?" someone shouted. She was already screaming for help. His name was Admiral Thomas Hale, and until that moment, no one in the hallway had realized he was about to die. Emily Carter had been a nurse for 11 years, and for the last 3 of them, she had carried a quiet grief so heavy it had reshaped the way she walked, the way she spoke, the way she trusted her own instincts. She worked nights now, long, underpaid shifts where the hospital lights felt colder and the hallways stretched on forever. Nights were quieter, safer, fewer people to disappoint. She hadn't known who the man was when she first noticed him. Just another older patient walking too fast, jaw clenched, face pale in a way that didn't match his pressed uniform or the confident way he moved. He was flanked by 2 younger officers who laughed softly as they walked, unaware that the man between them was counting his steps because his vision had started to blur. Emily saw it in his neck first. The slight twitch, the pulse jumping wrong. She slowed her cart. "Sir," she said gently, already stepping toward him. "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine," he snapped, waving her off. "We're late." She heard the lie in his voice. Nurses always did. Then she saw his hand drift toward his chest, not in pain, but in confusion. His breath caught, shallow and uneven. His pupils dilated, eyes unfocused, like he was trying to remember where he was. That was when she moved. "Sir, stop walking," she said, louder now. One of the officers laughed. "He's tougher than he looks." Emily didn't smile. She saw it then, the sudden drop in blood pressure, the classic signs she had memorized back when her husband was still alive and she still believed that following rules always saved people. Admiral Hale staggered, and before anyone could react, before protocol or rank or respect could intervene, Emily did the only thing she knew would force his body to reset. She punched him, not out of anger, out of desperation. Her fist struck his chest with a sharp, practiced force, enough to trigger a vagal response, enough to shock his heart rhythm back into alignment for just a second. He collapsed. The hallway exploded with noise. "What the hell did you do?" one officer yelled, grabbing her arm. Emily dropped to her knees beside the Admiral, already checking his pulse. It was weak, but it was there. "Call a code blue," she shouted. Now, security came first. They always did. Hands pulled her back as doctors rushed in, voices overlapping, orders flying. Emily stood there, shaking, her scrub smeared with sweat and someone else's blood, watching as they loaded Admiral Hale onto a gurney and rushed him away. No one thanked her. No one asked why. All they saw was a nurse who had crossed a line. She was escorted to an empty consultation room and told to wait. Minutes passed, then an hour. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She thought of her husband, Daniel, lying in a hospital bed years ago while a junior doctor dismissed her concerns. "He's stable," they had said. "We'll monitor." He died 6 hours later. Emily pressed her palms together, breathing through the memory. She knew what she had seen in that hallway. She also knew what the hospital would see when this was over. Assault, insubordination, a career-ending mistake. The door finally opened, and the hospital administrator stepped in with a face already carved into disappointment. "Do you have any idea who that man is?" he asked. Emily nodded once. "Yes, sir." "And you still thought it was appropriate to hit him?" Emily swallowed. Her voice was steady, even as tears burned behind her eyes. "I thought it was appropriate to save his life." The administrator sighed, rubbing his temples. "The Admiral went into ventricular arrhythmia," he said quietly. "If not for the timing of your intervention, he wouldn't have made it to the OR." Emily closed her eyes. For the first time since the punch, she let herself breathe. But relief didn't come, because saving someone's life didn't mean you were forgiven for how you did it. And Admiral Thomas Hale, once he woke up, was not a man who forgot being brought to his knees in a public hallway. When Admiral Thomas Hale woke up, the first thing he felt was anger. It wasn't pain, not yet. It was the deep, burning humiliation that settled in his chest before his senses fully returned. The kind of anger that came from losing control in front of people who were trained to never see you fall. The ceiling lights were too bright. The smell of antiseptic filled his nose. Machines hummed softly around him, their rhythm steady, almost mocking. His mouth was dry, his body heavy, like it no longer belonged to him. He turned his head slowly. A doctor noticed immediately. "Admiral Hale, can you hear me?" "Yes," he croaked. "What happened?" The doctor exchanged a glance with the nurse beside him. "You suffered a sudden cardiac arrhythmia in the hallway. You were minutes away from cardiac arrest." Hale's jaw tightened. "I don't collapse in hallways." The doctor hesitated. "You didn't. You were intervened." That word irritated him. "By who?" Silence. Then the doctor said carefully, "A nurse. Emily Carter." Hale's eyes hardened. Memory rushed back in fragments, the blur, the pressure in his chest, the sudden impact that knocked the breath from his lungs. The shock. The floor. "She hit me," he said flatly. "Yes," the doctor replied. "And that strike likely saved your life." Admiral Hale stared at the ceiling, processing that sentence like it was written in a foreign language. Saved his life. By hitting him. By humiliating him in front of his officers. In a hospital hallway, his hands curled into fists beneath the blanket. "I want to see her," he said. Emily sat alone in the locker room long after her shift officially ended. The room was empty, quiet except for the buzz of fluorescent lights. She hadn't bothered changing out of her scrubs. She didn't see the point. They were probably the last ones she'd ever wear in this hospital. Her phone vibrated in her pocket for the 10th time. She didn't check it. She already knew it was her sister, asking what happened, asking why security had called, asking if she was okay. Emily wasn't sure how to answer that. She replayed the moment over and over in her head, the way his face had gone pale, the way her body had moved before fear could stop it. She didn't regret it, not even a little, but regret wasn't what decided consequences. The door creaked open. Emily looked up. The hospital administrator stood there again, this time with a woman from legal affairs beside him. Both of them wore the same expression, careful, measured, distant. "Emily," the administrator said, "the Admiral has requested to see you." Her heart sank. "Am I under arrest?" she asked quietly. The legal officer shook her head. "Not at this time." Emily stood on shaky legs. "Then let's get it over with." Admiral Hale watched her enter the room. She was smaller than he remembered. Slim, tired, her hair pulled back messily, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Not the image of someone who would dare raise a hand against a 4-star. "Admiral." She stopped a few feet from his bed and stood straight, hands clasped in front of her. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "Not for what I did, but for how it looked." That caught him off guard. He studied her for a long moment. "You don't deny it." "No," she said. "I'd do it again." The doctor stiffened. The administrator cleared his throat nervously. Hale exhaled slowly through his nose. "Explain." Emily took a breath. Her voice didn't shake. "You were going into ventricular arrhythmia. Your blood pressure dropped suddenly. Your vagal response was already unstable. You were seconds from collapsing without a pulse. I didn't have a defibrillator. I didn't have time." She looked him in the eye. "So I shocked your system the only way I could." Silence filled the room. Hale searched her face for arrogance. He didn't find it, only exhaustion, and something else, old pain, buried deep. "You risked everything," he said. "Yes." "Why?" Emily hesitated. Then she said, "Because I've watched someone die while people waited for permission." Her voice cracked just slightly. She recovered quickly, but Hale noticed. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. Hale leaned his head back against the pillow. For the first time since waking up, the anger loosened its grip, replaced by something heavier. "How many times have you done that?" he asked quietly. "Broken protocol to save someone." Emily shook her head. "Just once, and it might end your career." "Yes." "Do you have children?" he asked suddenly. Emily swallowed. "No." She didn't add that she'd wanted them. That her husband had wanted them. That the hospital bed she'd stood beside years ago had stolen that future from her. Hale nodded slowly. "You know," he said, "my wife died in a hospital." Emily's eyes flickered. "Pulmonary embolism," he continued. "No one caught it in time. They followed every rule, every protocol." The room felt smaller. "If someone had punched her," he said softly, "and saved her, I would have thanked them." Emily's breath caught. The administrator shifted, sensing the change in tone. Hale looked at her again. "You embarrassed me." "Yes, sir." "You disobeyed rank." "Yes, sir." "And you saved my life." Emily said nothing. "I will not press charges," Hale said firmly. "And I will personally ensure your record reflects what actually happened." The administrator exhaled in relief. But Hale wasn't finished. "I also want you transferred." Emily's heart dropped. "To my medical advisory team," he continued. "Effective immediately." Her eyes widened. "Sir, I don't need people who follow rules," he said. "I need people who see what others miss." Tears filled Emily's eyes before she could stop them. She turned her face away, ashamed of the reaction. Hale watched her quietly. "Emily," he said, "thank you." She nodded, unable to speak. Weeks later, Emily stood in a different hospital hallway. This one was quieter, brighter, calmer. She wore a new badge now. One she hadn't thought she'd ever earn. But she still wore the same shoes. Still carried the same memories. She paused near a window and watched sunlight spill across the floor. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. And somewhere in another wing, Admiral Thomas Hale took his first unaided steps after surgery, his heart steady, his pride humbled, his life rewritten by a nurse who refused to look away. Neither of them would ever forget the sound of a body hitting the floor. But now, when they remembered it, it didn't sound like violence. It sounded like survival. Months passed, but the memory never loosened its grip. Emily learned quickly that saving a life didn't erase the past, it only changed the weight she carried. Her transfer came with respect on paper and suspicion in the hallways. Some doctors looked at her. With admiration they didn't say out loud. Others looked at her like she was dangerous. Unpredictable. A nurse who might decide she knew better than the system. She kept her head down. She always had. The advisory team worked out of a quiet wing that smelled faintly of coffee and old books instead of antiseptic. Emily spent her days reviewing near-miss cases, walking through timelines where a single minute had changed everything. She listened to families who wanted answers the charts couldn't give. She sat in rooms where guilt hovered like smoke. At night, she still dreamed of Daniel. In the dreams, he was always awake. Always smiling. Always asking her why she hadn't fought harder. One evening, long after most of the staff had gone home, Emily sat alone in a conference room staring at a frozen video frame. It showed Admiral Hale's collapse from a hallway security camera. She had watched it dozens of times by now. She knew every second by heart. Still, her hands trembled. "You don't have to keep doing that," a voice said gently. She looked up. Admiral Hale stood in the doorway, leaning slightly on a cane. He moved slower now, more carefully. Mortality had changed the way he occupied space. "I wasn't aware this area was restricted," she said, instinctively formal. He smiled faintly. "It's not. I asked to come." She closed the laptop. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't demand filling. "I watched it again today," he said. "The footage." Emily nodded. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "I'm not." She studied his face. He looked older than before. Not weaker, just more human. "They tell me I'm cleared for limited duty," he continued. "Desk work, advisory roles, no more pretending I'm invincible." Emily smiled softly. "That's a hard adjustment." He chuckled once, then grew serious. "I owe you more than my life." She looked down. "I did my job." "No," he said quietly. "You did more than that." He pulled a folded letter from his jacket and placed it on the table between them. "My wife wrote this," he said. "Years ago, the night before she died." Emily didn't touch it. She was scared, he went on. "She told me hospitals weren't listening to her. I told her she was overreacting. I told her to trust the professionals." His voice wavered, just slightly. "I was wrong." Emily's throat tightened. "I can't fix that," he said. "But maybe I can make sure someone else doesn't die because a voice went unheard." He met her eyes. "I want you to lead a new initiative. Rapid response autonomy. When a nurse sees danger, real danger, they act. No permission, no hesitation." Emily's breath caught. "They'll fight you," she said. "Hospitals hate change. They'll fight me," he corrected. "And I can handle that." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "I don't want anyone else to sit where I sat," she whispered. Wondering if speaking up would have saved someone. Hale nodded. "Neither do I." The program launched quietly. At first, it was just training sessions and policy drafts. Then came the first save. Then another. Then a nurse in a rural hospital who trusted her instincts and didn't wait. Emily received the email late one night. Patient survived. Cardiac arrest prevented. Family grateful. She closed her laptop and cried, not loudly, not dramatically. Just the steady kind of crying that came from years of holding everything in. For the first time since Daniel's death, the guilt eased its grip. On the anniversary of the hallway incident, Emily stood outside the hospital entrance, watching people come and go. Life moved forward, indifferent and relentless. Admiral Hale joined her, standing at her side. "You know," he said, "They still talk about that punch." She smiled. "I hope they do." He laughed softly. They stood there as the sun dipped below the horizon, the building glowing behind them. Emily thought of all the moments she'd been told to stay quiet. To wait, to trust that someone else knew better. She thought of the moments she hadn't listened. And she understood, finally, that courage wasn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was a single, desperate choice in a hallway where no one else was paying attention. The world kept moving, but because she hadn't looked away, it moved differently for some people. And that was enough.